Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jerry Cooey,
I'm Deborah Nelson.
and we're glad you're tuned in to watch us again as we sit here overlooking the beautiful banks of the Blackwater
Yes.
River in our executive suites. Stories.
It always looks the same from this
Stories.
spot.
Well, you know, we've got a good window, Deborah.
Yes.
We got, you know, I mean, when you have executive suites,
Yes.
in
As we do.
the power and the money that we
Right.
have,
Right.
you can have a window overlooking the banks.
It's
And,
great to be a playa.
Yes, and we didn't use one bit of Obama money to get that.
Not yet, no.
We got it the old-fashioned way.
I don't think it's available to this part of the country. I could be wrong.
We worked very hard with it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know. Very well may take several shows going over all of this, but we're going to start out with
The state's attorney
right.
has ruled or made a finding on this ongoing inquiry they've had into Team Santa Rosa, and there was also a complaint about the county commissioners.
Right, and let's redefine for everyone, ladies and gentlemen, the Sunshine Law is very important to all of us. The issues at hand with Team Santa Rosa, and we're going to focus today on the open records. It's Chapter 119. If any of you want to take the time to look at it yourself, you can go to the Attorney General's webpage. There's a link to Florida Sunshine Laws. Look at Chapter 119. And in a nutshell, it says that if you're a qualified board, if you stand in the shoes of government, if you accept taxpayer money as the two big qualifiers, you're required by Florida law, your records have to be open.
And you have to hold public meetings.
And you have to have
That's the Sunshine Law side.
advertised public meetings.
That you take minutes at.
That is Chapter 286.
That you take minutes at.
Right. And so this is something that I have worked on about
A long time.
close to 6 years.
Yeah.
And
In a nutshell, the state's attorney found that Team Santa Rosa had been breaking Sunshine Law up until February of this year, and had also had broken public records law and corrected it to some extent, but there were still some problems with public records law, and that was an issue, but they didn't think they did it on purpose.
right.
And so there will be no.
Yeah, and as we
Further
go,
action.
as we go through this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read some stellar comments from the state attorney's office. If matter of fact, Deborah, I told a friend of mine that he'd be wasting his time if he went out to get any white paint. And he said, well, what do you mean by that, Jerry? I said, well, they've used up all the white paint, whitewashing this whole situation.
Well, what Edna said was, it is clear that Team Santa Rosa operated outside the requirements of the Sunshine Law before February of this year. But he says there's insufficient evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt that any kind of crime occurred, and that their failure to follow Sunshine Law, now this is the open meetings, does not appear to be based on any attempt to intentionally avoid the law, but rather on Team Santa Rosa's belief that the Sunshine Law was not applicable to their organization.
Well, you know, Deborah, I find that very.
It's been a 6-year fight.
I find it.
We have felt differently, and we were right.
Yeah, and look, I'm not one to crow too much. I just want government to fulfill its duties and obligations to me. But I am going to say this, ladies and gentlemen. I was right. And Don Salter, Gordon Gooden, Bob Cole, Cindy Anderson, Dick Baker, and Ed Gray, they were wrong. My contention has been from the very beginning that Team Santa Rosa had to follow Chapter 119 and they had to follow Chapter 286. And although, and let me state very strongly here for our viewers, I am very disappointed that we did not get a grand jury to allow a group of citizens to determine if crimes had occurred here. The fact that the state attorney's office has an opinion that they didn't violate any laws or it was insufficient for criminal charges, I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean, we will look right here in what Deborah just read you prior to 2009. Team Santa Rosa, they didn't say might have operated outside. They said operated
Yes.
outside of
Yes.
the requirements. And what's interesting is 2 paragraphs down, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm reading directly off of the report. This is from the state attorney's office. In late 2008, the issue of Team Santa Rosa was again raised. At that time, Danhauser advised, and Mr. Tom Danhauser is the county attorney, that when dealing with a private entity, a number of criteria should be used in determining if the Sunshine Law was applicable. At that time, he stated Team Santa Rosa should operate in the Sunshine Law. Okay? This is their report, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't write this up. They're stating right here that Team Santa Rosa had been violating the law since 2008 after they were told by an attorney, the county attorney. Then Roy Andrews comes in and he advises them the same thing in October of 2008, and they continue to violate the law until February
And
2009.
You and I had also visited them before that, last year. In 08, you and I went and
Right.
visited them about the same time we did that visit
Little
to the,
guerrilla tactics
the
with the
visit to their
camera.
office with the camera.
Right.
And we asked them we told them at that time, you step in the shoes of government, we think that the meetings need to be open. You need to open your meetings so the public can see what you're doing. And they told us that they disagreed with us at that point,
Right.
if I remember correctly.
They actually said, we'll have to get the attorneys involved
Yes.
to determine that.
Right.
Well, ladies
Right.
and gentlemen, I don't need to get an attorney involved. The Sunshine Law is very clear. And I'm going to state my case just like I did to the state attorney's office, which ignored my humble opinion. Team Santa Rosa has been in violation of the Sunshine Law since their inception over 8 years ago. They have knowingly and willingly violated the law, and they specifically violated the law since 2008 when our very own county attorney
Right.
told them they should follow it.
Up until February of 09. Now, it took the governor of this state to make them conform in February of 09.
And we will remind you, and we had a clip in the earlier show. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy is important to me. And I'm going to tell you, along this trail that I've been on, I have many battle wounds to back up my trail. But when the governor's in town and they hand you a microphone, I'm going to speak the truth. And if it hadn't have been for that opportunity to tell the governor that we have a problem in Santa Rosa County, we'd still be wallowing around in
We
this.
would be. My guess is that. And here's what happened after the governor's office called them in February of this year, is the president at the time, Ed Gray, came out publicly and said, well, we've been told we should probably open our meetings up. And we recognize, he put this in writing too, we recognize that we get public dollars. And so that's why, and specifically,
Right.
specifically putting it on the fact that they get public dollars rather than on the fact that they step in the shoes of government and perform a
Right.
public function. They did not want to, in my opinion, legally go on the record and say,
Right.
we believe we perform a public function. And what we've got, and I know you're not as thrilled with it, but what we have with this state attorney opinion is we have the state attorney definitively stating on paper in black and white, Team Santa Rosa, and I'll read it out. Santa Rosa County has delegated the performance of its public purpose to a private entity.
Right.
And that's what they've been avoiding having stated in black and white for so long. It's now here on paper.
Right.